30 years. That's the sentence for singer R. Kelly. 55-year-old fallen star learned his fate after being convicted of racketeering and sex trafficking. R. Kelly was dressed in dark glasses and a khaki shirt. When asked by the judge if he wanted to make a statement, he declined.
Kelly is a predator, and as a result of our prosecution, he'll serve a long jail sentence.
R. Kelly got hit with 30 years in one federal case and another 20 in a separate one. But now, new court filings are raising a wild question. What if he doesn't even live long enough to serve all that time?
These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly rather than allow the corrupt criminal conduct.
His lawyers are claiming the conditions inside are putting his life at serious risk, and it's sounding more intense by the minute. Then out of nowhere, a newly revealed release date got people talking heavy, wondering if his time might actually be cut short way earlier than anyone expected. Now things are getting real complicated. The man once on top of the music world is now behind prison walls saying he might not make it out alive. Picture this, one of the biggest stars ever, songs playing at weddings everywhere, face all over magazines, now sitting in a cell telling the world someone is trying to take him out for good. That's where Robert Sylvester Kelly stands right now, better known as R. Kelly, the same voice behind I Believe I Can Fly, the same guy who crafted hits for Aaliyah back in the day. Now he's locked up and his legal team just dropped a serious claim in court.
Lawyers for R. Kelly want him released, saying his life is in danger behind bars.
They're saying his life is in danger, but not from other inmates or street drama inside. They're pointing fingers straight at the prison itself, saying it's the system putting him at risk. Listen to that for a second. You catch that? This isn't some random online rumor or wild comment section talk. This is coming directly from his legal team, and they are dead serious about it. The Bureau of Prisons
Filed an emergency motion this afternoon claiming officials with the Bureau of Prisons are trying to have him killed.
Yeah, the same agency that's supposed to keep inmates safe is now being accused of something way darker. His legal team is straight up claiming the system meant to protect him is actually putting a target on his back. And it sounds unbelievable at first, but wait till you hear this. Before brushing it off, look at what was actually filed in court, because this situation gets real wild, real fast, like something straight out of a crime movie.
Kelly's lawyer named 2 people who claimed they were solicited by the Board of Prisons to kill him.
His lawyer, Bo Brindley, submitted paperwork in Chicago federal court back in June 2025, and what's written in that motion reads like pure chaos. According to that emergency filing, prison officials allegedly tried to recruit an inmate named Michael Glenn Stein to carry out a deadly plan.
These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly rather than allow the corrupt criminal conduct.
Now, this isn't just some random name. Stein is reportedly tied to the Aryan Brotherhood, a prison gang that's been infamous for years and known for serious violence. This isn't light stuff at all, and it gets even more intense. Reports claim Stein was already dealing with a terminal illness, meaning his time was limited anyway. So Kelly's team is saying someone inside the system may have offered him a deal, early release in exchange for taking Kelly out. That's a huge claim and it raises a lot of questions. Both of them were being held at the same facility in Tucson, Arizona during all this. But wait, there's more to it.
I have no idea that there's 2 different men. That there's the person, Robert, there's the persona, R. Kelly.
Kelly's legal team also alleges that someone connected to the Bureau of Prisons actually contacted Kelly directly and gave him a warning, telling him to stay away from the mess hall. Why would they say that? Because according to these claims, the food itself might have been tampered with. The allegation is that it was being poisoned, and that's how they were planning to get to him.
When I was pregnant with my first child, he locked me in a bathroom, and I slept in a bathtub.
That takes this whole situation to another level entirely. You really can't make this stuff up, but this is where things shift from sounding wild to straight up disturbing. After Kelly's lawyers filed that motion, he was reportedly thrown into solitary confinement. And not because of any new rule violation. His team says it was completely against his will, locked down for 23 hours a day in rough conditions. They describe a dark cell, bugs crawling around, barely any human contact at all. That kind of isolation can mess with anyone's head. And it didn't stop there. Kelly reportedly started refusing meals because he believed the food might be poisoned. That fear had him on edge every single day. Then things took an even more serious turn. On June 12th and 13th of 2025, while still in solitary, his lawyers claim prison staff gave him an excessive amount of his anxiety and sleep medication. Not just a normal dose, an overdose, according to the filing.
Kelly is currently serving a 30-year sentence for child sex crimes.
He ended up collapsing and had to be rushed to the hospital immediately. Doctors later found blood clots in his lungs, which is no small issue. That's life-threatening stuff right there. But what happened next raised even more concern.
Lawyer says they're seeking a presidential pardon.
Reports say armed officers came in, removed him from the hospital, and sent him right back to that same solitary cell. His legal team didn't hold back. They called it part of an ongoing plot against his life. Now, it does sound intense, and a lot of people questioned it. Some felt it might be a strategy to gain sympathy or push for early release. Even the court wasn't convinced at that point. A judge denied his emergency release request in June 2025, saying there wasn't enough solid proof to support those claims. No outside investigation confirmed the story, no independent evidence backed it up, just the defense putting it forward in court. So for now, Kelly remains behind bars, continuing to serve his sentence as ordered. That's the sentence the courts handed him, and still, his team didn't back down. They kept pushing, even bringing up the idea of trying to secure a presidential pardon. That alone shows how far they were willing to go to change his situation. But the story didn't stop there. Not even close. Because in February 2026, something else happened that threw the whole R. Kelly is in danger narrative right back into the spotlight. And this time, it came from a completely different facility. He was transferred to FCI Butner Medium 1, a federal prison in North Carolina. New location, but according to these reports, the same kind of issues followed him there. And what allegedly went down next, even more shocking than before. Word from inside says Kelly got involved in a mentor program at the prison. That's one of those setups where inmates help guide others through their time. Pretty standard in the federal system. But here's where things start to get questionable. A warden or high-ranking official was reportedly overseeing that program, and before retiring, this person gave Kelly something he probably wasn't supposed to have: his personal cell phone number. Supposedly, it was meant to keep the mentor work going after retirement, just staying in contact and continuing the program from the outside. But then everything flipped upside down. Kelly's cellmate ended up getting caught with a contraband phone. And in federal prison, that's a serious violation. No small mistake at all. That kind of situation can bring heavy consequences real fast, so when guards searched the cell, they didn't play around. They tore the whole place apart looking for anything suspicious, and during that sweep, they found a notebook that belonged to Kelly. Inside it, a personal phone number written down clear as day, the same number tied to that retired official. That was all it took. Kelly got pulled out immediately and thrown into the SHU, the Special Housing Unit. That's the official term, but inside, everyone knows what that really means. It's the whole. Straight isolation. The same kind of lockdown his lawyers said nearly broke him the year before. And just like that, he was right back in it again. For 2 full weeks. No general population, no normal routine, no regular privileges. Just 4 walls, constant monitoring, and an internal investigation hanging over his head. The whole situation was centered around one question: why did he have a former prison official's number written in his notebook? Meanwhile, the Bureau of Prisons stayed completely silent through all of it. No public explanation, no details, just the usual response about privacy and security reasons. That silence had people paying close attention to every statement coming from Kelly's legal team. And his lawyer, Bo Brindley, didn't hold back at all. He said Kelly was being held under the label of an investigation but claimed there was no solid reason behind it. According to him, the connection was simple: the mentor program. He argued that the number was given to Kelly directly, not something he tried to sneak or hide. Still, that didn't stop the situation from escalating fast. Then by mid-March 2026, just as quickly as it started, things shifted again. Prison officials released him from the SHU and sent him back to general population. But by then, the tension around his situation had already reached another level. In the end, that investigation reportedly found no wrongdoing, no charges, no discipline, nothing stuck to him. But his legal team wasn't letting it slide. They pushed back hard, saying he was held without any real justification and that the facility had no choice but to release him. Then the story hit the public. TMZ broke it on February 16, 2026, and after that, it spread everywhere. Major outlets started picking it up. People Magazine, Complex, Black Enterprise, everybody was talking about how R. Kelly ended up back in the hole again. So look at where things stand right now. For over a year, his lawyers have been claiming the prison system is putting his life at risk. He's been placed in solitary multiple times, even ended up hospitalized at one point. And every time something goes down, his team files more legal motions trying to push for an early release. Now, the big question people keep asking, what's really going on with his release date? With all these serious claims, alleged threats, the reported medication incident, repeated isolation, and non-stop legal appeals, you'd think something would have shifted by now. But that's where things get even more interesting. Because when you actually break it all down, the convictions, the sentencing, those 30 years, the civil cases, the appeals process, it tells a much bigger story than most people realize. And trust this, the next part really puts things into perspective. How did one of the biggest names in R&B end up facing decades behind bars like this? To understand why he's fighting so hard to get out, you have to look closely at how everything started in the first place. And this part right here, it's a lot to take in for real. R. Kelly, born Robert Sylvester Kelly on January 8, 1967, came up on the south side of Chicago in the Ida B. Wells homes. That's the projects. Real tough conditions, no shortcuts, no easy path. His mother, Joanne, raised him and his siblings on her own. She was a school teacher and also sang in the church choir, so music was always around him. From early on, she made sure he stayed connected to gospel, and that influence stuck with him heavy. Kelly started singing in church as a kid, and by around 8 years old, things were already getting serious. There's a story that his mom would put a nickel on the record player needle just to slow down Stevie Wonder songs, just so he could practice and learn every note properly. That's the level of focus they had on music in that house. He later went to Kenwood Academy in Hyde Park, where he also played basketball. He didn't finish school, but one person saw something bigger in him. His music teacher, Lena McClin. She recognized his talent early and pushed him towards singing, helping him take it seriously. And from there, everything started moving fast. By 1991, he signed with Jive Records and formed a group called Public Announcement. In 1992, they dropped Born into the 90s, and it went platinum. Then came his solo breakout, 12 Play, in 1993, which sold over 5 million copies. And it didn't stop there. Bump and Grind held the #1 spot on the R&B charts for 12 straight weeks. That's a serious run and a sign of how big he was becoming at that time. 12 straight weeks at #1. Nobody was even close to touching that. Then came the major crossover moment in 1996 with I Believe I Can Fly from the Space Jam soundtrack. That track went everywhere, won 3 Grammys, and turned into a full-on anthem. Graduation, sports highlights, motivational speeches, you name it. Even now, people hear that song and feel something deep. At that point, Robert Kelly wasn't just big. He was on top of everything. But while all this success was building, there were already serious concerns behind the scenes. And whether people didn't know or just didn't want to face it, those issues weren't getting the attention they should have. Back in August 1994, Kelly was 27 years old and at the peak of his career. Around that time, it later came out that he had secretly married a young singer, Aaliyah, who would go on to become a major R&B star before her tragic passing. Reports later revealed that she was underage at the time, even though documents listed her as 18. According to federal prosecutors, there were allegations that false information was used to make the marriage happen, including claims about a fake ID being obtained. The marriage was eventually annulled in 1995 after her family learned what was going on. That situation raised serious concerns early on. But despite that, his music kept playing everywhere. Then in 1996, a woman named Tiffany Hawkins filed a lawsuit, alleging their relationship began when she was underage while he was in his 20s. That case ended in a settlement of $250,000. After that, more lawsuits followed, along with additional settlements and quiet resolutions that didn't always make big headlines, and then things escalated even further in 2002. A Chicago Sun-Times reporter named Jim DeRogatis received a tape that allegedly showed Kelly in a highly inappropriate situation. That moment brought intense attention and pushed the controversy into a whole new space. The situation escalated when allegations surfaced involving a girl believed to be 14 years old, leading the state of Illinois to indict him on 21 counts related to illegal material. The case dragged on for years, 6 long years of delays. And when the trial finally happened in 2008, Kelly was acquitted. One major factor? The girl seen in the footage never testified in court, and her family denied it was her. Jurors later said they believed it was Kelly in the video, but they couldn't prove the age beyond a reasonable doubt. And in the legal system, that doubt changes everything. So once again, Kelly walked free. His career kept moving. More music, more tours, more money coming in. But even with all that success, the rumors never disappeared. People close to the situation had been mouthed about it for years, but nothing seemed to stick publicly. Then came 2019, and that's when everything shifted in a major way. Lifetime released the documentary series Surviving R. Kelly, executive produced by Dreamhampton, 6 episodes, and it had everyone talking. Survivors began sharing their stories one after another. Family members spoke out, former associates added their accounts, and it all painted a disturbing picture. The series described an environment where control was a major issue, with claims that women were being closely monitored in their daily lives. According to those accounts, there were strict rules about basic activities, limited communication with the outside world, and heavy restrictions placed on personal freedom. These were serious allegations, and they caught widespread attention. The impact was immediate. RCA Records cut ties with him. The Mute R. Kelly movement gained major traction online. Streaming platforms started pulling his music from key playlists, and most importantly, federal authorities began taking a closer look. One prosecutor even shared that a Homeland Security investigator watching the documentary helped spark renewed interest in the case. By 2021, Kelly was facing a major federal trial in Brooklyn, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. This time, it was federal court and the charges were serious: racketeering and sex trafficking. Prosecutors didn't hold back. They used the RICO statute, a law usually aimed at organized crime and major operations. Their argument? That Kelly wasn't acting alone but running a full network over decades. They claimed this operation stretched more than 25 years, involving people around him: managers, security, drivers, assistants, all playing roles in keeping things moving. According to the case presented, the goal was to use his fame and influence to bring young women into his circle, then control the situation once they were inside. The trial itself was intense from start to finish. The prosecution called 45 witnesses, while the defense brought in 5. Multiple women testified about how they first encountered him, often at concerts, then staying in contact through his team before eventually traveling to meet him. Some testimonies described strict rules and control over daily life. There were also claims about being required to refer to him in a specific way, along with accounts of serious mistreatment. One woman described a violent incident that left her unconscious, while another shared that she later learned about a serious health issue without being informed beforehand. These were heavy and difficult claims, and the courtroom heard every detail. Prosecutors argued that he had known about certain risks since the 1990s, but still continued relationships without disclosure, which became a major point in the case. After weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury reached a decision. In September 2021, the verdict came in: guilty on all 9 counts. That included 1 count of racketeering and 8 counts tied to violations of the Mann Act, a federal law that prohibits transporting individuals across state lines for illegal purposes. Then came the next major moment, June 2022, when sentencing was finally on the table and everything he was facing became very real. 30 years. That's what the court handed down. 3 full decades behind bars. Judge Ann Donnelly made it clear during sentencing that the public needed protection from this kind of conduct, and she wasn't backing off that stance. Prosecutors had pushed for at least 25 years, while Kelly's defense team argued for less than 14, pointing to his past and personal struggles. But the judge wasn't convinced by that argument at all. One of the prosecutors even made it clear how serious they believed the situation was. His attorney, Jennifer Bonjean, also spoke out after the sentencing and had a lot to say about the outcome. And inside that courtroom, the emotions were intense. Survivors shared their statements directly, and the weight of those moments was felt by everyone present. One of them said, "But even that major case in New York wasn't the end of it." While that trial was wrapping up, Kelly was already facing another federal case, this time in Chicago, and the stakes were just as serious, if not more. The Chicago case focused on charges related to illegal material and the involvement of minors. Prosecutors presented video evidence that was described as extremely difficult to watch, but the jury still had to review it as part of the case. In September 2022, the jury reached its decision. Kelly was convicted on 6 out of 13 counts, including 3 counts tied to production of illegal material and 3 counts related to influencing minors. He was found not guilty on several other charges, including obstruction of justice. Then came February 2023, sentencing time again. He received 20 years in that case. But here's the twist: 19 of those years were set to run at the same time as his New York sentence. So in reality, it only added about 1 extra year to his total time. That brings his combined sentence to roughly 31 years, with a projected release date of December 2045. By then, he would be around 78 years old, making this a sentence that stretches deep into the future. That's the sentence, that's the reality of it, and that's exactly why his legal team has been working nonstop, trying to find any possible way to get him out early. Because from their point of view, this wasn't just time, it felt like the end of the road. And what they tried next? It gets complicated real fast. With decades on the line and a client claiming he wasn't safe behind bars, his team knew they had to act. So, they went all in on the appeals process. Jennifer Bonjean took the lead on much of that work, and she's known for being tough, persistent, and not backing down, even when the odds are stacked high. They came in with multiple arguments, challenging the case from different angles. One of their main points was that the RICO statute was being pushed too far. They argued that a law usually used against organized crime groups was being applied to what they described as individual actions. They also pushed back on the idea of an enterprise, claiming it didn't meet the legal standard prosecutors were presenting. According to the defense, it wasn't a coordinated operation. It was one person facing accusations from multiple individuals. And they didn't stop there. They raised concerns about juror decisions, timing issues related to when charges were filed, questions about the strength of the evidence, and how certain testimony was handled in court. They threw everything they had into the appeal, every legal argument they could bring forward. Then in March 2024, things moved to the next stage. Oral arguments were heard at the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan. 3 judges sat on the panel, listening closely as both sides laid out their positions. The defense made their case, the prosecution responded, and then it all came down to the court's decision. On February 12, 2025, the ruling finally dropped, and it wasn't short either, coming in at around 85 pages. A detailed decision that would shape what happens next in a major way. The decision came down, and it was clear. Conviction upheld, sentence upheld, all 30 years still standing. The court didn't leave much room for debate either. They stated that Kelly had used his fame over decades to take advantage of girls and young women, and they backed the jury's original findings completely. Every single argument from the defense got shut down. The judges said the use of the RICO statute was valid, the evidence presented was strong, and there were no issues with juror bias. They also made it clear that the trial judge handled the case properly, with no misuse of authority. In simple terms, the court stood firmly behind the verdict. But even after that, Jennifer Bonjean wasn't finished fighting. She took it one step higher and filed a petition with the U.S. Supreme Court, asking them to review the case, especially how the RICO law was applied. Now here's the reality. The Supreme Court only accepts a very small number of cases, maybe around 1 out of every 100 petitions. And in June 2025, they declined to hear Kelly's case. No detailed explanation, no breakdown. That's just how that process works. That same month, his legal team filed that emergency motion claiming his life was in danger. The situation involving solitary confinement, the reported hospital incident, all of it coming back into focus again. And over in the Chicago case, things didn't go any differently. The 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld those convictions too, with a ruling issued on April 20th, 2024. They rejected arguments about timing, pointing out that federal law had already been updated back in 2003 to extend how long these kinds of cases could be brought forward. According to the court, his actions still fell within that legal window, so that argument didn't hold up. And once again, the Supreme Court chose not to step in. On October 7th, 2024, they declined to hear that case as well, closing another possible door for appeal. They didn't even ask the government to respond. That's how little weight the court gave that petition. It was dismissed fast, and just like that, his direct appeals were done on both cases. No more easy legal moves left, no clear path out, he's locked into that 31-year sentence. But the legal trouble doesn't stop there, not even close. While the criminal cases were playing out, civil lawsuits were stacking up in the background, and those brought a whole different kind of pressure. 6 women who appeared in Surviving R. Kelly reported receiving serious threats, allegedly tied to Kelly or people around him, trying to intimidate them from speaking out. They took it to court, and they won big. The judgment came out to around $10.3 million. That includes about $5.1 million in compensatory damages and another $4.5 million in punitive damages. And on top of that, interest has been building every single day, roughly $2,450 added daily. Now here's the part that stands out. How much of that has actually been paid? Less than $500,000 across 2 payments. That leaves over $9.9 million still owed, and that number keeps growing. So the women push forward again. They filed additional actions to recover what they're owed, going after anyone who might be connected to his income streams. That included major companies like Universal Music Group, along with his publishing entities, managers, and royalty platforms. If money was tied to his name, it became part of the legal fight. Courts have already ordered some of those funds to be handed over. In one case, Universal turned over more than $500,000. In another, Sony was required to release royalty payments as well. And this process hasn't stopped. It's been ongoing for years. The effort to collect what's owed is still active, adding yet another layer to an already complicated situation. There are more civil cases on top of that too. In one lawsuit from 2019, a woman was awarded $4 million after alleging that Kelly began a coercive relationship with her when she was 16. That case saw a change in early 2024 on procedural grounds, but the core allegations behind it didn't just disappear. So look at the full picture now. This is the financial and legal reality surrounding R. Kelly. He's incarcerated, serving a long sentence, facing multiple judgments, and owing millions while portions of his royalties are being redirected through court orders. His ex-wife, Drea Kelly, also spoke publicly about what life with him was like during their marriage. In an interview, she said, she described experiencing different forms of abuse over the course of their 13-year relationship. She shared that while performing on stage beside him, she was also dealing with personal struggles behind the scenes, including trying to hide visible injuries. She also talked about a turning point where the situation escalated further. In another account, she described being physically restrained during an incident, explaining how serious things had become at that stage. Drea said she filed for an order of protection in 2005 but withdrew it just weeks later. She explained that fear played a major role in that decision. At the time, Kelly was extremely powerful in the industry, and she didn't believe legal paperwork alone would guarantee her safety. Eventually, she made the decision to leave. She took her 3 children and filed for divorce in 2006. Since then, she has become an advocate, speaking out in support of others dealing with domestic abuse. So, when you put everything together, criminal convictions, civil rulings, survivor accounts, appeals that have all been denied, and even the Supreme Court choosing not to review the cases, it paints a very heavy situation. And on top of all that, there are still those ongoing claims from his legal team that his safety inside prison is at risk, adding yet another layer to an already intense story. The big question everyone keeps asking, has R. Kelly's release date actually changed? Here's the real answer. As of April 2026, his projected release date is still set for December 2045. That would make him around 78 years old at the time of release, if he makes it that far. His legal team has been trying everything they can think of. Emergency motions, Supreme Court appeals, arguments about prison conditions, even raising concerns about misconduct inside the system. They've also mentioned the idea of seeking a presidential pardon, but so far, none of that has changed his situation. He was transferred from Tucson to FCY Butner Medium 1, but that move didn't bring any major shift in his case status. In February 2026, he was placed in solitary confinement again over the notebook situation involving that phone number. Then just 2 weeks later, he was released back into general population. So despite all the headlines and intense claims, nothing official has changed in terms of his sentence or release timeline. It's still the same outcome on paper. At the same time, online discussions have been going in all kinds of directions. Some people question the case, others defend the outcome, and there are plenty of opinions being thrown around from every angle. But when it comes to the legal system, decisions aren't based on opinions or speculation, they come down to evidence. And every appeals court that has reviewed this case more than once has come back with the same conclusion. They've consistently ruled that the evidence presented was strong, the convictions were valid, and the sentence was appropriate under the law. The Second Circuit made that position clear, and that ruling still stands today. The Seventh Circuit made it clear, and the Supreme Court backed that up by not even taking the case. That silence spoke loud. R. Kelly's release date has not been updated. He's still locked into that 30-plus year sentence, still owing millions to victims, still with limited legal options left on the table. Despite ongoing filings and efforts from his legal team, that December 2045 date remains the one that stands. And unless something major shifts in a big way, Robert Sylvester Kelly is expected to spend the rest of his realistic life behind federal prison walls. The empire he once built, it's collapsed. The allegations brought forward have been examined in court, and the outcomes have changed how his legacy is viewed. The music that once dominated charts and defined moments now carries a completely different weight when people hear it. That's the reality behind all the headlines, and what's actually playing out step by step. No matter how many motions get filed or arguments get raised, that release date isn't showing signs of moving anytime soon. If you made it this far, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, share this with someone, and leave a comment with your thoughts, because this story got people talking everywhere.